Shabbat Shalom. At Leo Beck College, our rabbinical school, we were encouraged to get therapy. When I was beginning mine, an older relative asked, "What on earth do you need therapy for? You aren't broken." 2 years later, that same relative had found themselves a counsellor and was walking through a lifetime of grief and trauma. We all have things to deal with in life, and it's so important that we're beginning to understand that it's not a sign of weakness to look after our mental health and to acknowledge there might be a problem. This turnaround has, I think, been mirrored across not only the Jewish community, but society more broadly over the last few years, with celebrities and royalty helping to lift the taboo over talking about our mental health. Although there is still a way to go, thank goodness the shift arrived before 2020. As we know, in lockdown, many people missed medical appointments or were too worried to go to their doctors and hospitals to get worrying bodily changes looked at. This will have devastatingly cost lives. Similarly, the mental health of the nation has been deeply impacted and may have gone unchecked. It's important that we acknowledge the danger in ignoring the challenges of mental health, just as it is for our physical health. This week's Torah portion explores the last of the 10 plagues. I've always been struck by the pain the Egyptian people must have experienced collectively in their suffering, especially through the devastating final plague. But the word plague has resonances for us today that it didn't last time we gathered for Jami's Mental Health Shabbat. Having lived through almost a year of the modern plague of COVID-19, we too are suffering, not only from the plague, but a host of anguishes caused by it, one of which is the increasing fragility of our mental health. The plague of darkness suffered by the Egyptians could in fact be a metaphor not for dark skies, but emotional gloom. At some point, it has been the experience of almost everyone I know over the last year. Whether parents trying to cope with children who don't want to learn with them and juggle full-time jobs, or individuals experiencing wrenching loneliness and isolation, folks who have lost their jobs and security, and so many who have lost loved ones they were unable to support in death or grieve fully for due to social distancing. Our children have certainly not escaped this, being torn away from their educations, their friends, their safety nets and structures, as well as witnessing fear and confusion in the adults in their lives. All of this will, I suspect, leave trauma we will be dealing with for years to come. As communities, we've all done what we can to support one another physically, to protect one another from the plague of COVID-19, and to find new ways of connecting to one another through this strange and difficult time. But we mustn't forget this other plague. Just as we tackle physical health, we must be willing to acknowledge our darkness, to reach out to one another, and to find where help and support lies. For some, this is a piece of work that takes a lifetime. For others, it may be more short-lived. For all of us, it is something we must not be ashamed of or turn away from. In the face of physical plagues like COVID-19, the Torah knew what to advise. Isolate those with illness, welcome them back when it is safe to do so. Make sure they wash. While it might seem there are fewer answers when dealing with plagues of mental health, it isn't necessarily so. In Exodus 10:23, we hear that one of the biggest problems with the plague of darkness was that people could not see one another. And in the Friedman translation, each man did not get up from under it 3 days. The plague of darkness meant that people couldn't meet one another, something we know more about from this year, but also couldn't see each other's suffering and struggle, and thus they were crushed under the experience of this penultimate affliction. In the face of this darkness, so many of us have had a glimpse of this year. Let's try to find ways that each of us can help to bring light to the darkness, so that we can truly see another person before us, can help them, or perhaps ourselves, up from under the oppressive weight of the darkness. There are no simple fixes to any health challenge, but I pray in the months to come we are able to support one another through any darkness, short or long, just as we have cared for our community's physical health through the pandemic.